Hello, today we're going to do Chapter 12, Lesson 3. The title of this lesson is Classifying Triangles. If you recall from the previous lesson, we talked about different kinds of polygons. A triangle is a polygon that has 3 sides. We can classify them using attributes. At the top of the page here, it tells you an attribute is a characteristic of a figure like side measures and angle measures. So we're going to look at triangles today, and we're going to look at their sides and their angle measures. Let's look first at example 1. The Hammond family traveled from Columbus, Ohio to Dallas, Texas, and then to Atlanta, Georgia, before returning home. The distance of each flight is shown on the map. Find the number of congruent sides. So the first thing we're going to do is look over here at the triangle. You will see that on the sides of where they went, they connected the dots and made a triangle, and it has the measurement of the miles for them. So it says the lengths of the sides of the triangle are 924 miles, 573 miles, and blank miles. So the only one that was missing is 729 miles. So we can go ahead and write 729 miles. How many sides of the triangle are congruent? Well, if you take a look, these miles represent how long the sides are. And if you notice, none of them are the same number. So there are 0 congruent sides. Okay, so that is not a congruent triangle. At the bottom, we have the 3 types of triangles that we talk about when we classify them by their sides. The first one is isosceles triangle. If you look at the measurements on an isosceles triangle, 2 of the sides are the same. I remember this because the letter capital I has 2 sides that are the same. Okay, the next triangle is an equilateral triangle. And if you take a look at the equilateral triangle, you have 3, 3, and 3. So on this, the E has 3 lengths here that are the same. So equilateral triangles have all 3 sides the same length. And the last one is a scalene triangle. And if you take a look at the side measurements, none of them are the same. Just like the letter S has no line segments and nothing is the same. So that's how I remember it. I make their capital letters of each of how they start, and that helps me remember. So using this information, going back up to example 1, since none of the sides of the triangle are the same, it makes that triangle a scalene triangle. Now, side measurements is only one way that we can classify triangles. We can also classify triangles based on their angles. So let's take a look up at example 2, I'm sorry. It says triangles form the sides of the Khafre pyramid in Egypt. Determine the number of acute, obtuse, or right angles in this triangle. Now, before I fill this in, let's look down here at the key concept, okay? So let's take a look here, right here. For the key concept, we have 3 types of triangles. The first one is acute. Acute angles measure less than 90 degrees. So I always remember as a cute little angle, and that is acute. So if you have triangles that measure less than 90, angles that measure less than 90 degrees, you have 3 of them, it is an acute triangle. The next kind of triangle is the most obvious one because right triangles, if an angle is right, it usually has this little square in the corner. That means you could put a piece of paper and it would fit, the edges of the paper would fit there. A right angle equals 90 degrees. So when you have a triangle that has 1 right angle and it has 2 acute angles, it's considered a right triangle. The last type of triangle is obtuse. An obtuse triangle has at least 1 angle that's bigger than 90 degrees. So 1 obtuse angle, which is more than 90 degrees. So sometimes it's hard to take a look here, but when I turn my triangle around a little bit, so you can see I turn my book around. This angle right here is little. It's an acute angle. This angle right here is also an acute angle, but this one, it doesn't measure 90 degrees because there's no box there. It's actually bigger than 90 degrees. So because it's bigger than 90 degrees, that's where we get our obtuse angle. So if I go up to the top here and I take a look, how many of the angles of the triangle are acute? Well, let's do the right one first. Do you see any squares in the corners? I don't think any of these are right. So there are no right angles. I do not see any of these angles here that are bigger than 90 degrees because they're all quite little. So I'm going to say there are no obtuse angles And all of these angles are acute angles, which means all of them measure less than 90 degrees. So they has 3 acute angles. And if I use my angled classification chart, that makes this triangle an acute triangle. Okay, let's go to the guide to practice. It says classify the triangle based on its sides. So we have a 4, a 2, and a 2. If you remember and recall, there are 2 same side angles. So there are 2, or same side angles, same size of triangles, sides. So because they are 2 of the same size, it is isosceles. Make sure I spell it right. I'm gonna go back to the page before. It's isosceles. Now we're going to classify this one just on the angles. So first of all, when I take a look, I do not see any right angles. If I did, there would be a square in the corner. So right triangle is not an option. Secondly, I see this looks like a little angle. That looks like a little angle. And if I turn it, that one also is smaller than 90. So all 3 angles are less than 90. So this is an acute triangle. If you're having trouble in looking at the angles, you can move the book around and take a look. Like I looked at it here and I turn it like this and look here. And then I turn it like that and look there. So all 3 are acute. Okay, let's go on to the next page. Number 3, they want us to give a classification for sides and angles. So we're going to give 2 answers for these. So on number 3, none of the sides are the same. Because they're not the same, first of all, based on sides, this is scalene. Again, all I had to do was go back to here and take a look here to help me. Now I take a look at the angles. Okay, so this is acute because it's little. That's acute because it's little. But this doesn't have a square in the corner, but I think it looks like it would be right. Because it is pretty up and across it, I could put a square, I could make a square there. So I'm going to call this a scalene right triangle. Okay, so remember, we're doing it basing it on the sides and the angles. Number 4, there are 2 sides that are the same. And if you remember that from before, that makes this an isosceles triangle. And now I'm going to look at the angles. This one looks less than 90. This looks less than 90. And that looks less than 90. So since all 3 are less than 90, it makes it an acute triangle. Okay, this one only wants us to look for angles now. So we're not going to look at the sides. We're just going to look at the angles. So if I take a look, this looks like it's less than 90. This looks like it's less than 90. I'm going to turn it and take a look. This looks bigger than 90 degrees. So because one angle is bigger than 90 degrees, I'm going to call this an obtuse triangle. Number 6. This looks less than 90, that looks less than 90, and I'm going to turn this, and that definitely looks less than 90. So all are less than 90, so this makes this an acute triangle. Number 7, right away, the square in the corner tells me that it's right. I don't even have to look at the others. And number 8, this looks less than 90, this looks less than 90, and if I turn it, that looks less than 90, so that is also acute. Number 9 and 10 is asking us to draw the triangle. So equilateral triangle, all I got to do is go back to the page from before, and I can see that equilateral means all 3 of the sides the same. Now, if I really wanted to be accurate, I would probably get out a ruler to make sure that my sides measure the same, but that they all look pretty close to the same there. Number 10, a right triangle. Drawing a right triangle, you basically put a straight line up, you make your right angle, and then you connect it and you can draw your corner box. Okay. All right. If there aren't any questions, please go ahead and get started on page 919 and 920.